My Gavanen Melonin, and well met indeed. I'm Arachir Galadirthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to the same as we bring you another developer diary. And this one is mostly going to focus on the campaign map, I'm afraid. There are very, very few battle map changes. So let's get straight into it then. Allow me to again just apologise. You can't see the cursor. If that puts you off, apologies. NVIDIA will fix it soon. So the first thing that it will be different in the next version is some of these are minor, but I just like to go through over some of anything that's changed really. So apologies for that. But anyway, with all of the apologising out of the way, the first thing is that the Green Book overhaul has begun. So when the next version of the game comes out, the Green Books are going to look a little something like this. So rather than have a individual Green Book for every single region, they have now been grouped. So you've got things like Linden, Ered Luin, Arthedain, things like that. And then it will break down each individual region within that setting and tell you what type of terrain it has. Because terrain does play a very big part in how easy it is for you to train your units, and previously the information has been mixed at best. Some regions had the wrong information, some of them didn't even have information, so it's all being streamlined and it now will actually tell you. Additionally, somewhere within each faction, yet to be done, but something that will come in the future, will be somewhere that tells you what your nation prefers, so that you will know, I am playing as the elves, that means they prefer mountainous or grassland regions, and they dislike forested and barren, the new region that is yet to be applied. So that's the first thing. Second up, and I didn't play as Bree, there's not really many changes to show you, to be honest anyway, but a few more portraits from Narus's portrait submod have been added to the game. Specifically, this affects Bree the most. Bree now have a totally custom portrait set to pull from, so they no longer will look like the other Northmen nations, which is obviously Dale, Dorwinion, Angmar, believe it or not, and Rohan. They now have their own, so that's quite nice. And a few other custom portraits have been added from Narus's, which are better than the ones that we had. So there's just a little bit of more polish with portraits around. Some buildings have been cut from the game. Chief amongst these are the Candish War and Peace outposts. So if you were playing as Mordor, Rhûn or Harad, and you attacked Cand, you were able to build an outpost in Candish lands that allowed you to train their troops, but it came with a big happiness negative. Although that building is now gone. And additionally, if you play as Harad, Mordor or Rhûn and you are allied to Cand, then you were able to build a building in your capital city that also trained Candish forces. That building has gone as well, and those units are still available, but they are now just available through the standard barracks. And you still require the same triggers, so you've either got to be at war with Cand, or you've either got to have claimed Candish lands, or you are allied to Cand, but the units now just come from your barracks. Also, the music line, which Gondor, Dol Amroth, the Northern Dunedain, and the Elves got, has been cut from the game, so there's no longer a music line. It was a totally useless building, so it went because we needed a few more buildings, as we'll get onto in a moment. Some name rechanging for the Woodland Realm. The Elven King's Guard, which is their very, very uber elite unit, available if you decline the Elven Alliance, and then thereafter available in Dol Guldur, Caras Galadon, and Thranduil's Halls. That is now called Arathirith, which means Elven King's Guard, but in flawless Sindarin. The three units that people never named because they couldn't ever spell or write their names, the Hirenech, Lang, and Ibeng, have all been renamed to Elven King's Gate Guards for the one that has a sword on each end of a pole, Elven King's Axe Guard for the one with an axe, and Elven King's Bow Guard for the archers. So Sindarin's been used a little less throughout the Woodland Realm roster. Something that many people will be very pleased with. I don't actually think the elves get it, so I can't show you it with them either. But the chicken farming building, which just gives population growth in whichever town it's built in, that has now been made destructible. So you can destroy it when you capture a town. I don't know why it was made indestructible before, but there we are. A bigger change, Dunland, Cand, Lothlorien, and is it Harad, the last one? And Dorwinion, sorry, all now have family trees. They are no longer Teutonic. So some cases, it just means that they're a little less thematic than they were before, in that they now actually have ruling families, whereas we wanted them to be more like someone is elected as leader. But unfortunately, of course, as you all know, Teutonic is just so much easier to wipe out a faction when they have a Teutonic tree. In practice, it's supposed to be harder. In fact, in practice, it's supposed to be that they cannot die to regicide. That is what they intended when they created the system, but they didn't fix the annoying little bug that is, if your heir and your leader are killed at the same time, your faction is wiped out. Which is a huge oversight on Creative Assembly's part, and it meant that the Teutonic system was utterly broken. And so, other than nations who really shouldn't have family trees, it is now pretty much gone from the game. Something that many people are going to like, given the discussion recently about how towers in towns are stronger, is that siege equipment now walks as fast as infantry on the campaign map. So you'll no longer be slowed down by taking catapults, ballistae or trebuchets with you. The premise being that they would dismantle the siege equipment and simply walk it to its destination. They would not be pushing a great heavy machinery. They would simply load it into wagons and carts and walk it there at a normal pace. So you can do that. Boats for all factions that get boats have been slightly balanced better, so that the number of men on each boat is now uniform, which means that the strengths and weaknesses of the boats now purely come from their attack and defense stats, and no longer were there some boats that were better than they should have been because it didn't realize that they had like twice the number of sailors, and the game still goes on a per number of men basis rather than it calculates a battle between boats in the same way that it would a battle between two units on land, which is foolish. But there we are. So anyway, boats are just better balanced now. Something that I'm very pleased to see is the chance of rain and storms has now been reduced worldwide, but fog is slightly more likely in mountains than it was before. So you should now get, generally speaking, if you're fighting out in the grasslands or the forest, you'll get relatively good weather, and if you fight in the mountains, you might get some fog. So that's quite good. The AI bonus garrisons that dot various major cities like Anuminas, Deadman's Dyke, Bree, for example. The AI gets garrisons in those towns whether or not it has built the armory, and many of those have now been weakened in size, so the AI will not get as much of a benefit when defending major cities. If the player is playing as the Northern Dunedain, who we shall talk about greatly in a moment, then Moria will no longer get Bruenost in the turn 1 auto expansion. You'll note at the minute we are at turn 1, and the expansion happens between turn 1 and 2. But Bruenost is no longer claimed by Moria if you play as the Northern Dunedain, so you get a little bit of a reprieve from the constant onslaught that Moria sends your way. In addition, 1 unit of Arthedain footmen and 1 unit of Dunedain wardens have been added to Hervigild's army, who sits within that fort. So he's got an extra couple of units to give him a bit more of a boost. And the rebel garrisons in both Anuminas and Deadman's Dyke have been weakened. They've lost a couple of units each. So it'll be a little easier playing as a Northern Dunedain. Not massively so, but a little easier. So you're welcome to those who were struggling. That's courtesy of Arcade, mostly. Now, the reason I chose Linden is because the final aspect of Linden's gameplay has been set up, and that is the coming of the twins. So at the moment in our family tree, you'll note that they both exist, but you simply can't actually use them, because at the moment they are off fighting with the Northern Dunedain. And around turn 15, it's either turn 15 or 16, you will get a message that says we should be seeking, basically, go and get the twins back. Their time in the Northern Dunedain has come to an end. We need them. We're in danger. Go and get them back. And you have to send a diplomat to that point there, where the two roads meet. Now, it can be actually 5 tiles, anywhere within 5 tiles of that point, but that point is the designated spot. Send a diplomat there, make sure he ends a turn there, and then the twins will spawn the very next turn. One of them spawns in the forests here, in the lowlands of Rudar, or in the forests of Rudar, and the other spawns on the Weather Hills. Now, they each come with the High Elven Cavalry Archer Bodyguard unit. I haven't done all of the UIs properly yet, but the Elven Bodyguard unit is... not the Elven Bodyguard. The Elven Cavalry Archers are their bodyguard units, but they also come with 1 unit of that unit that doesn't have a UI, the Dunedain Scouts, which is another Cavalry Archer unit, but just slightly worse than the Elven one. And then they will spawn with those. So that rounds out the High Elf changes. Next up then, Arthedain, Ruidour and Cardland now all conform as much as possible to their historic boundaries, which means units available in those regions, generally speaking, are now available in more regions than before. Arthedain has gained a significant number of provinces. It has gained 6. So previously Arthedain was just, in the game files, these 4 that you can see on screen here, because those are kind of the remnants of Arthedain, if you will. But in truth, it should stretch all the way up. I didn't include Fuirost. I didn't want Garth Heligoth or Fuirost. Or actually, I think I did include Fuirost. No, I didn't. But I did include Goberdine. So it goes from Goberdine and it comes all the way down now to Undertowers and then the border of the Shire. So basically the Shire is now within Arthedain, as it should be. So it's just all of that sort of stretch there, including Ostgelon. Cardland lost 2 provinces that it gave to Ruidour, and these are the Angle, Fenestruinen, and the Weather Hills. Because even though the Weather Hills marks the boundary of all 3, our actual Weather Hills province is exclusively within Ruidour, apart from the literal hills themselves. So this is now a Ruidour province rather than Cardellani, and as is the Angle. And in practice that just means that the Arthedain Footmen, Arthedain Knights, they're all available in more provinces than they were before. And Ruidour also a couple extra. Something that I've already skipped past and you've seen, but now you can see in truth, is the Sea of Nirn. I've tried to blend it as best as possible, but it's difficult with textures that are so jarringly different. But the Sea of Nirn now has a grassy green surround. So when you fight there, it will not have the black and horrible charred mess that is Mordor's battle maps. It will now be a nice lush green battle map. Reflecting the fact that it is fertile. The horrible dark plain we think of as Mordor is the plain of Gorgoroth, which is exclusively limited to the area around Ordruin and Barad-dûr. It doesn't go beyond the mountains, the spurs of the Ered Lithui and the other one called Efel Duath. So Nirn is green, fighting back against the Black Plague of Mordor. Something that I am really pleased to have changed, and many people will be very pleased to hear of as well, is that moving your capital city no longer costs 5,000 gold coins. It now instead, it doesn't actually tell you in the thing because I need to edit that text, but it now actually costs 125 gold coins, making it a nominal cost, barely even appreciable. Because it just shouldn't cost money to move your capital city. Like, we're not talking about a capital city in now in the year 2019. This would be a simple case of just carting some paper documents to a different city if they'd even bother doing that. So I didn't think it needed a great sum of money to represent the fact that something is happening, but nothing too severe. So now the biggest reason we did this change is because the AI constantly updates its capital. This is something you may not know. But when you start chipping away at an AI faction's terrain or their holdings, and the centre of their mass, if you will, constantly shifts, they change their capital to reflect that to try and cut corruption. And so when it was costing them 5,000 gold coins, they were constantly paying that money. Well, I say constantly. They didn't change loads. They'd have to really, really shift for something like that to happen. Gondor's the best example. Gondor almost always changes its capital from Minas Tirith to somewhere either Ethring, Tarnost or Brethil because it's considerably more central. So it's just costing the AI money for no reason. So that is gone. Now, before we get on to the 2 major changes to discuss, the final miscellaneous change is that all of the XP giving buildings have now give something else. Some have been cut and others have just been retooled. So you can no longer get experience bonus as a thing from any building, purely because it is bugged, and it was just an absolute nuisance to constantly be told that you should retrain this unit, retrain this unit, retrain this unit. Many people would retrain the unit and not realise that you have to do it at the end of your turn, and then they would just be in a cycle of constantly retraining a unit and wondering why. And also as a sort of an organisation freak, it used to drive me up the wall that they would constantly be able to be retrained for a measly 1 experience point boost. So we just gutted it. You can no longer get troops with AI with XP bonuses. The biggest change of this system is in Gondor. There used to be a military academy that Gondor and Dol Amroth both got. That has been retooled. It is now it used to be 2 tiers and it's now 1. It is simply called a fiefdom way station. It's been given a new UI to reflect that, and all it does now is it retrains your fiefdom units. It also gives extra upkeep in the town that you build it in, and it gives a 5% or a 10%. It gives a percent bonus to lore. I can't remember whether it's 5 or 10. So it's a minor bonus to lore, it's a couple of free upkeep slots, but most importantly it retrains your fiefdom units. So the point of the building really is to put it near your front lines, and then when your fiefdom units have all fought hard and are a little battered, they don't have to go all the way back to Lond Gallon or Cerelon to retrain, or indeed Minas Tirith. They can now retrain on the front lines. Depending on how we feel, it may possibly be given an extra tier, and maybe in the future might actually just train fiefdom units, but you'll be hard pressed to convince us to do that, to be honest. But it's something that certainly crossed our mind. Now, the major change for the next version is the Beacon of Hope, and I don't need to be the Northern Dúnedain to do this. I can just do it as the elves. So no longer do the Northern Dúnedain train their Beacon of Hope units through barracks. They are now trained as mercenaries, but not for every faction. There are some exceptions. And they will only train for mercenaries if the following effects have taken place. So the Runic and Haradrim and Ardenaim, which are also down in the south, and also the men of Ruidour, those 4 nations will only train their troops to you, will only give their troops to you, if their parent faction is dead. So if Angmar is dead, then Ruidour can then be trained. If the Ardenaim are dead, then you can train their troops. If Harad are dead, you can train theirs. If Rune are dead, you can train theirs. The difference, Ruidour is one of the set of units that does come from the barracks, though. But the other 3 will all come as mercenaries in the heartlands of the regions they come from. So, this is Heartland of Harad, for example. You'd get Haradrim units in these regions. Ardenaim would be these 3 regions that you see here: Ardamir, Umbar, Khaldun. But the nation needs to be defeated. So it doesn't matter too much, because as the Northern Dúnedain, you're very unlikely to make it to Rune Harad or the Ardenaim unless you've sailed there on purpose. But now you can train the mercenaries when that faction is dead. So Aragorn's skill with word is not good enough to turn the Haradrim, the men of Rune, or the Ardenaim away from their cause unless their nations have been defeated first. For Rohan, Dale, Dorwinion, the Anduin, Gondor, Dol Amroth, and Bree, you can train their forces if you are not at war with them. So you don't have to be allied. You don't have to worry about allying with them, but you simply cannot be at war with them. And if you do go to war with them, you will lose the ability to train their troops. So essentially this is good nations. The good nations you must be at peace with, or you can't get their forces. And again, they come as mercenaries in the heartlands of those regions, those nations. The only 3 nations that you can train their troops no matter what are Cand, Enedwaith, and Dunland, where it is felt that Aragorn's word is strong enough to turn them against their own kin, basically showing them that they should be fighting for the side of good, because Sauron will kill everything. The Easterlings, the Ardenaim and Harad, they've been tainted and turned to either Sauron's dominion, or they are so independent and they hate Aragorn above even Sauron that they just wouldn't fight for him. But Cand, Enedwaith and Dunland are just more like children that have been swayed, and they need a parent to come in and sway them back again. So they will train no matter what. You can be at war with Enedwaith and still train their troops as mercenaries. Now, if you are unfamiliar as to how mercenaries work, I can't actually show you because Lyndon don't get any, but I can show you what you would usually do. So with a general in a region that trains mercenaries, this button would be selectable, and then you get the mercenary tree. I only say that because I think some people probably don't know how to get mercenaries, but that's how mercenaries work. It must be a general. Captains cannot get mercenaries. And when you are in a region that a merc comes from, you get the merc. Now I hear you cry, but Galu, how do we then retrain those units? Well, worry not, friends, because if you have a mercenary unit within the town of the region that it came from, it can be retrained. So if I trained a Rohan cavalry unit from Dunlostir, I went out to battle and it lost 20 men, I brought it back to Dunlostir, I would then be able to retrain it. I don't need any buildings in the settlement, it will just retrain straight away. So that's how you retrain mercenaries. So in order to retrain them, you would still need the towns and the cities of your allies, but the point and the premise of it, you don't get very many units through the beacon system. And do remember as well that now all Dunedain units are available everywhere now. We've lifted the Eriador only restriction. Now, they train much slower outside of Eriador, and they require a 75% Dunedain culture, but they can train everywhere now. So the beacon system is now just more supplementing some weaknesses in your roster, or just giving you some variety. Now, the exceptions to the rule are as follows. In Isengard, you will still be able to train the 2 Orthanc Guard units, but you will need Isengard, and they come from the settlement. They are not mercenaries. In Edoras, you get Royal Guard, but again, you need Edoras. They come from the settlement itself. Gondor and Dol Amroth, their forces are trained in your barracks if you have their regions. I appreciate this gives somewhat of an incentive to attack Gondor or Dol Amroth, but in truth it's felt more that by the time you arrive down here, you would be arriving as liberators with their multitude of enemies having taken them down already. And then when the Dunedain are then freed by you, another type of Dunedain, they would willingly fight for you. And so they populate your towns and your cities, and they fill your barracks with their own men. So that's how you get Gondor and Dol Amroth troops. You actually just need their regions. And as I mentioned as well, the men of Ruidour will come from the barracks as well, but you have to defeat Angmar first. But that's about it on the mercenary front. Now, regarding the actual Dunedain trainable units, we merged the 2 existing Dunedain barracks into one single 3-tier structure. So all of your forces as the Dunedain now come from one specific building line. You don't have one for your Dunedain troops and one for your non-Dunedain troops. You just have one barracks. Because, of course, most of your non-Dunedain troops have gone from the barracks. And finally, the mercenaries are only available to the Northern Dunedain when they are controlled by a human player. So, which is a necessary restriction, otherwise, because of the way mercenaries work, Gondor and Dol Amroth would also get all of the Beacon of Hope system units. So we had to restrict it, but that's just a minor thing for the files. Steel Bowmen now come from the Tier 3 of this new Dunedain barracks, as do Arthedain Knights and Arthedain Royal Guard. So they don't come from... I think previously they came from unique structures like the actual Tower of Orthanc building within the Tower of Orthanc. But now they come from a barracks. And the final thing on the Northern Dunedain is that if the Northern Dunedain capture Imladris, they can train Amanyar sword masters. But they come from Imladris. They are not mercenaries. Alright, now one final thing to discuss before we jump over to the battle map, and this is something I've discussed at length in videos recently, and that is the triple boost system. The triple boost Blacksmith. So there's no UI for it at the moment, and I've chosen the elves. So I will change to the Northern Dunedain so I can show you what I'm actually talking about. Welcome then to the Northern Dunedain, and let's carry on. So we're talking about the advanced Blacksmith, but first of all let me just show you one of the new portraits, and Halbrad is an example of a new portrait. And if you had compared that image with the one he had previously, it's considerably less pixelated and much crisper of an image. And he also just looks quite like regal and noble there, I don't know. Anyway, so we are talking about the Northern Dunedain. So first of all, let me show you that they now get their single barracks, which is somewhere here. Garrison quarters? Nope, I don't want that. Encampment. It's called Encampment. There we are. Dunedain War Camp is the first tier. Dunedain Barracks is the second tier. And why the castle one is broken, I do not know. And then the third tier is called Dunedain Royal Barracks. I'll have to fix that. So there's the 3 tier. That's your your only barracks now. But the building we're interested in, as I say, it doesn't have any UI yet, but it is the Advanced Blacksmith. Now, for the forces of Gondor, Dol Amroth, and the Northern Dunedain, it's called a Númenórean Foundry. But for most factions, it is simply called an Advanced Blacksmith. So that you know that it's the advanced version. And for us, the Dunedain, it gives Númenórean Plate. And no longer is Númenórean Plate the highest tier of the standard Blacksmith. Instead, it's Númenórean Chain Mail. So most of the Blacksmith tiers have been renamed to Leather, and then Superior Leather, Chainmail, and Superior Chainmail, and then a Lord of the Ringsy kind of name for the 5th tier if they get it. But the purpose of the Advanced Blacksmith, I've discussed this, as I say, in the videos. This will give an extra boost to the final tier. So, if I'm playing as a Northern Dunedain and I've built all 5 tiers of the standard Blacksmith, I would then unlock the ability to build the Advanced Blacksmith. And the Advanced Blacksmith gives an extra armor tier to units that can utilize it. And it will give 3-point boost rather than 1. It's that simple. So a standard blacksmith would take Dunedain Rangers from 6 to 7. And then every unit can upgrade 3 times. So the Dunedain Rangers would go 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9. But now with the Advanced Blacksmith, they will go 6, 7, 7, 8, and then 8, 9, 10. 11. It adds 3. Now, do note that not every unit will get this system. Because certain units, all armor is tiered. So if a unit has armor between 0 and 3, then it can upgrade with armors 1, 2, and 3. But if a unit starts out with its armor at, say, 16, then it's already at tier 5, if that makes sense. So this system won't actually benefit the very, very, very lowly armored units, like the units that have 0 to no armor, or 0 to 3 sort of armor. Those kind of units won't get it. So your absolute garbage trash will remain garbage trash. But mid-tier all the way up to late tier will generally benefit from the Advanced Blacksmith. Every single faction in the game gets an Advanced Blacksmith, apart from there are 4 or 5 exceptions. I'll discuss those in a moment. And the Blacksmith itself is only available in certain key settlements. Now, I know I've spoken a lot already, but I am just going to list off most of these settlements. And they are Isengard, Royal Tharbad, Anuminas, Dol Amroth, Carn Dum, Thorin's Halls, Imladris, Thranduil's Halls, Caras Galadon, Eregion or Ost in Ethil, Dane's Halls, Moria, Western Moria only, not Eastern, Gundabad, Dol Guldur, Umbar, Minas Tirith, Barad-dûr, Erebor, Cirrig Gothol, Mistrand, the Black Gate, and Mithlond. So, key major settlements that have been in existence for a very long time, or just major evil settlements, because the evil ones needed some too. You'll need one of those regions to get an Advanced Blacksmith. So, the Northern Dunedain, for example, the nearest one available to me is... I don't think Dead Man's Dyke or Anuminas is actually available to the Northern Dunedain, but Royal Tharbad certainly is. Is Royal Tharbad actually? No, I don't think it is, because you don't get the Advanced Blacksmith if your culture built that town. So, Gondor does not get Minas Tirith. Dol Amroth does not get Dol Amroth, because they wouldn't be able to utilise the better blacksmithing that comes from that city, because they built that city, if that makes sense. So I don't think the Northern Dunedain actually get Royal Tharbad, Anuminas, or Dead Man's Dyke, but they would get Carn Dum. Or Imladris is probably the closest, actually. So I'd need to take Imladris. I would need to then build all of my current blacksmithing tiers. So you have to build all of the ones that you already get. And then the advanced one comes in. And then I can send units to Imladris where they can then get that 3-point armor boost. That is how the system works. It is more useful, I have to confess, for the... Well, as it should be, really. It's more useful for the factions that actually are less armoured than it is for the ones that are heavily armoured. So, notwithstanding, as I say, those garbage trash units that have no armour, they don't really benefit from the system. But mid-tier units, which make up pretty much all of Enedwaith, Dundon and Anduin's rosters, for example, benefit hugely. So it really gives the wild men a bit of a punch, but it just helps everyone across the board, really. And it's a cool way to make big cities a bit more important without just chucking a unit at them. So the nations that don't get this system and have a variant of it, Dorwinion. Dorwinion will get a 3-point blacksmith if they simply side with the Avari. So they don't get the advanced blacksmith, but they get the benefit of getting their 3-point boost everywhere. So if you're playing as Dorwinion and you side with the Avari, your normal blacksmith will give you the 3-point boost in its highest tier. Now that is of course offset by the fact that if you choose the humans, you don't get the triple boost at all. So that's why they can get it everywhere. Gundabad also do not get this advanced blacksmith. Instead, the Avengers Guild that they get in dwarven settlements, which is about as many settlements, give or take, from the number listed. Well, probably about half, actually. But they get the 3-point boost from the Avengers Guild, which comes from places like Daneshalls, Erebor, and Azanam, key dwarven settlements. So that's where Gundabad get it. Bree do not get the system either. They have to side with the Dunedain to get their 3 boost. Now, arguably, I might make it actually so that they side with the mercenaries, because the mercenary side is the dwarven side. But then the Dunedain side is both Dunedain and Elven. It's Dunedain and Elves on one side and Dwarves on the other, but no, we may just give it to Bree, either side, I suppose. It'd be some discussion about it, but Bree at the moment only get it by siding with the Dunedain, and the reason I'm blabbering on about that is because the Dunedain side is already heavily favoured by almost everyone, and it would seem worthwhile putting it on the other side, so it makes it more of a choice again. Anyway, Bree have to side with the Dunedain at the moment to get it. Dale also do not get this system. They get the benefit and the unique fact now of being the only faction in the game that gets the triple point boost no matter what. And, well, that's actually a lie. There is one caveat. You must be allied to Erebor. So if you're playing as Dale and you attack Erebor, you will never get the triple point boost. If you're playing as Dale and you stay allied to Erebor throughout the entire game, even if Erebor dies, as long as you're allied with them when they die, you will always get the triple point boost in your highest tier Blacksmith. So for Dale, you've just got to be allied to the Dwarves. The only factions that absolutely do not get this in any way whatsoever are the High Elves and the 3 Dwarven factions. Primarily because they're so heavily armoured it would just be massively overkill, but also because it actually affects very few of their forces. But the first reason is the primary. The Woodland Realm and Lothlorien are the other minor difference in that they only get it in one location, and that is Ostinethil, which basically means the Woodland Realm will never get it, and Lothlorien might if you take Khazad-dûm out and break your way through, and then probably even attack Imladris. But they only get it in Ostinethil because, of course, they're verging on the cusp of having the best armour anyway. So there we are. That's the triple point effect. Hopefully I've explained that. Hopefully this video has not been thus far just utterly boring as sin, because I've just spoken non-stop with very little in the background. But now we will jump over to the battle map, where the only thing really to see today is an explanation of how the Balrog's going to work, and all the new voice quotes for Gasp, Shock, Horror, Dol Amroth. They've been given new custom voice quotes, and I don't think they were present in the previous video. So I'm going to show you them all in this video. So here we are on the battle map, and as with the voices overhaul before, I'm simply going to click through each individual unit and let you actually listen to what they say, and then we can discuss them a bit at the end. And I've put a Gondor militia unit in so you can get a sort of comparison with the old voice quotes, because I think the Gondor militia was recorded by someone from the Third Age team way back when. So anyway, these are the Dol Amroth quotes, starting, of course, as I say, with a comparison.
Gondor militia! Gondor militia!
Ready for orders, sir. Infantry. Ready for orders, sir. Seaward footmen. Seaward footmen. Infantry. Tower guard. Do you hear the tower ring? Tower guard. Do you hear the tower ring? Haven guard. Your command. Guardians. Ready for orders, sir. Pikemen. Seaward spearmen. Infantry! Knights! Dol Amroth! Knights of the Talon! Knights ready. Your command! Archers ready. Ready arrows. Mariners ready. Mariners awaiting your command. We'll bring a storm upon them. Right swiftly. Commanders! Commanders! Guardians! For the Prince! For the glory of Númenor! Lancers! Commanders! Knights of the Terephia! Do you hear the tower ring? Your command! Knights of the Silver Swan! Knights of the Silver Swan! Knights of Etheland! Knights of Etheland!
So, there we are. Now, many of you will be saying, but Gallo, hold on. You previously used unique voice quotes from Battle for Middle-earth, and they said Dol Amroth-y things. And to that I say, yes, we did. But, to the keen-eared amongst you would have noted that the Dol Amroth voice quotes from Battle for Middle-earth only amounted to about 3 different voice lines, and the rest were filled in with Gondorian ones. So now the units, whilst I appreciate many of the units may sound relatively similar, a lot of them now, at least at one point or other, will say their actual name, which is always a benefit. And they all have bespoke Dol Amroth voice quotes. So Because the first thing that the better team said was, hang on, we used to have Bed of Middle-earth voices, what was wrong with them? And it was because there was only about 3 Dol Amroth quotes from all the pool of Battle of Middle-earth voices. So it was nice to introduce our own. Also now, the town of Itheland actually gets mentioned, and the Tirith Iar is also said with words, which is brilliant. So I'm very keen with the change, but do let us know your thoughts. And then finally, the Balrog. And now, at the moment, the unit is just a placeholder. Do not think this is what it is going to look like. That horrible, absolute Hermaeus Moran monstrosity is because I put a Balrog texture over what the trolls actually... That's a troll animation and skeleton with a Balrog texture, and it turns it into that horrifying nightmare of a creature. But no, it's even got the Balrog's head on its chest, but then no face. It's just so terrifying. It looks alright from the back, sort of. But anyway, this is what the Balrog is going to be. So the Balrog himself is going to be an officer, as I already mentioned, and there he is as an officer. And he's going to have trolls now as his bodyguard. And a general unit, this is exactly how the Balrog will be actually, but we're going to create a unique unit for this little man just standing here, because the Balrog itself will be the general of whichever army it's controlling or whoever it's with, and so it will need to have an actual general represented, and so we're going to create a custom little orc who is going to have to follow the Balrog around. Now, the downsides to this does mean that when that orc dies, you will get a message saying the Balrog has been killed, even if the actual Balrog still fights on. But it is the only way to have the Balrog in the game, and it is the lesser of many, many evils. So I'm pleased with the change. And the Balrog is now... We also made the Balrog considerably more powerful than he was before now, because he's a troll unit now. So he's really damn tough to kill. But anyway, there we are. It won't change how you get to the Balrog. He will still never be able to be used by a player. You will only ever fight against him if you play as Khazad-dûm, the Dwarves of. You won't be able to use him as Moria unless you fight a custom battle where he is available. The only final battle map change, but it wasn't really worthy of showing you in a video, is that the town centre flags for Bree and Angmar have been amended to match their factions much better than they were before. So they've got better town centre flags. But we've watched him sort of scurry all this way. He walks really weirdly with his arms down by his sides in a really bizarre way. And he just got trampled by his own troll. That was annoying, wasn't it? Given that he is a troll. And there they are, finally fighting. They do have body piercing and armor piercing, and they are not affected by pikes or anything like that. They're trolls, remember, they are infantry. They're just giant infantry. But anyway, that's the Balrog. So that's the end of this developer diary. It's been bloomin' lengthy, and it has gone on for ages, so I'm pleased to see the back of it. I apologise for the length in this one, and a lot of it, of course, was just the campaign map with me doing nothing. But thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have. Do be sure to check out Gamesplanet with the link in the description below. If you use the link that has my name, then we all benefit. So thank you very much for that. But until we speak again, dear friends, Navarre den Perimad Melonin, and farewell.
Only half